One prompt is a lie. It won't work with real places. It breaks the second you try it. Reality has rules. AI breaks them fast unless you control it. I didn't want a fantasy. I wanted Paris to stay Paris. So I used AI like raw material, then forced it into shape with human layers. Without AI, this is weeks of work, if ever. And doing it alone, no thank you. But with AI inside the pipeline, I pulled it off in one afternoon. Let me show you how. Now let's start in Google Earth Studio, where I created my base footage. Once you are in, you will see such screen. There is a magnifying glass where you put in where you want this to happen. So it will zoom into this place, and here you will create your desired camera motion. You have some main attributes which you can tweak and mark them with keyframes. In my case, I created this framing of Eiffel Tower, and I created keyframes for camera and target and also camera position. Then 300 frames later, I created this framing and also added keyframes. There you can see that when I play it, it moves according to my keyframes. I just tweaked the camera position itself, because in case of camera target, I made it stick to Eiffel Tower as a focal point. But if you would need maybe just a random flyover, you can tweak this part just as well. And also below here there is environment, which was important for me because I needed to pick the time of the day that produces kind of evenly distributed shadows, because as you can see, the quality of the environment isn't like that great, but still stunning. And I know that I will be retexturing it later, so I wanted it to like remain as much of feature point as I could. So I set it up to 3 p.m. but based on your scene, it might be different. And you will specify whether it's image sequence or video. I prefer image sequence because it gives you a bit more control, and sometimes you might need a single image out of there, which would be downgraded if it's baked into video already. So I stick with image sequence. It's 312 frames and I picked 4K dimensions. Then you can pick where you want the Google Earth branding to be. And if you have some use of it, you can export also JSX file for After Effects or coordinates if you would be using this directly within a 3D software. There are ways to do that, so you can orient your camera there, but we don't need that for this project. Now, once you're happy with it, you just hit start and it will start to render every single frame. Once that is done, you can see I have my set of images here. Download it, 4K JPEGs, which is quite convenient. And even though these buildings are a little bit distorted, it's still quite good result that allows you to do a lot with it. I then use those images to render my base video, which looks like this. It's 4K and it looks really interesting. It's safe in case of lighting. With my base video ready, I used Mago to retexture it into a scene that I wanted, which is like a dramatic shot of King Kong climbing on Eiffel Tower with a lot of distraction around and also with way more dramatic sky, because this is safe. So how to make it look like that? With Kling01, you are not using exact first frame to retexture it, which is the case with standard Mago model that retexture the video, but we still need to provide it with a reference. So I have used Nano Banana within the app to change the selected frame of the video. I have picked the best frame, which you will specify here as an exact frame number. And then I used Nano Banana with the prompt cinematic film still shot of an Eiffel Tower in Paris, dramatic. There is a King Kong climbing on the tower. And it gave me these 4 results. And I immediately liked this one. So what you need to do? Select your uploaded video, select the engine. In this case, it was Kling01, and you will give it a prompt and also a referenced image, which in our case was the restyled version with the King Kong on the tower. And it doesn't need to be the first frame, because with Kling01, it only acts as a reference, not direct style. And once I did that, it looked like this. You can obviously see that there is a King Kong holding onto an Eiffel Tower, which is cool, but the shot itself is not enough for what I intended to do, because if you take a look here, yes, there is some distraction, but only here in the middle part where the tower is and the King Kong is. Everything else, it's kind of a safe. And now that we rotated our camera, like nothing happened here. The Paris is safe. Therefore, I knew I would need way more videos so I can pull it off. Therefore, I just repeated that process and I generated a couple of videos with the same prompt. You can see that the positioning of the King Kong changed, but it really did not matter because I locked the King Kong position from the first generation that I was happy with, and everything else was just to get some other elements in my video, only so I can create a composition in After Effects where I will track it, mask it, and create one scene with enough of explosions and distractions. So let's do that. We are in After Effects, where you can see I have my main video here, which goes like this, but we are not using this. We use the second generation, which I think was the best for the job to present the King Kong on the Eiffel Tower. Now you can see it's the first generation here, but there's only so many explosions. And in here, like nothing happened. So I masked and edited in some elements from another generation. You can see there is a bit more distraction here. And one more behind the King Kong, also with explosion here, so it looks more dramatic. And also the problem which was happening in the last part of the video, meaning this part. It's really weird that in here we don't see anything bad happening, and I needed to fix it. And how I did that? I simply needed the video to run backwards, because it's way easier to control what will happen in the beginning. So I joined what I had till this point and I reversed the motion, because in here, yeah, there is some distraction happening, so that's quite fine. But in here, nothing happens. I rendered this reversed video and I uploaded it to Mago. Again, you can see it's the same video, it just plays backwards. And I retextured this part here, so it looks like this. But in here, I did not use Kling01. You can see it was their native Mago 3.4 engine, because now I needed to keep as much of features in. I just needed to add distraction. The first steps were similar. I just used the first frame here. I used the beginning of the video here, and I retextured it to add explosions and distractions all over the city. Then I picked the image that I liked and I used it here as a first frame. And you might ask, why didn't I use Kling01 again? Because Kling01 just restyles the video but it won't give you another data that I know I will need. And retexturing with Mago gives you one really important element that I will need from this point on, which is depth map. Because this allows me to mask my video in After Effects and apply certain effects and elements way easier, because I am able to layer the scene that I would otherwise need to maybe rotoscope, which would be really pain in the ass, or maybe do not so great selection and it wouldn't work great. This way, with the depth map, I can use this black and white video as mask. So let's take a look. You can see it took out the depth map. Then again, in here, it added distraction. And I really don't care what's happening in this part of the video, because the only reason I did it was to cover the ending part. Rest will be edited out. And with it, I created my first draft, which looks like this. In here, you can see the distraction is happening. If I make it not visible, it's before, here's after, before, after. Yes, there are some differences, but it is regenerated from the scratch with AI, so something like that actually happens. However, the main focus point, which is a King Kong here, is untouched, so it's quite fine. I needed to do some masking here, editing out the sky from the new retexture video, because it would look weird to have one sky here and different sky here. Therefore, I needed to mask it out. And with it, I have my main composition here. You can see I have my depth video here. I'm using it as a mask as I need it. And with this first matte, I was really happy what's happening there. Just enough explosion. It also happens after the drone or helicopter passes by the tower. That's fine. However, it doesn't look good enough yet. It still has that Google Earth look a little bit. So I moved to another layer of editing, which is color grading. Then we needed to add some motion blur there, because JPEG sequence from Google Earth doesn't have that. And such a shot need that definitely. Let's zoom out. So in here, I have my first composition done. Then I needed to add some motion blur so it looks more realistic. And then also just a tiny node of rain happening there, which is quite believable considering the amount of clouds there. And I think that this step moved it into completely different type of video, from just retextured Google Earth to something that might be used in some at least fan-made video, let's say. However, this is still not enough to sell the idea. We still miss two things: color grading with some cinematic visual pass and sound. Without it, it's still boring. And for that stage, I needed to do it elsewhere, because After Effects is not best for this job. In here, we have basically the identical render from After Effects, which needed some color correction to add a bit of emotion. And generally, I thought it was maybe too bright. Then it needed some cinematic visual elements, a bit of blur, bloom, cinematic grain over it, and selective color correction to make mainly the explosions pop out more. So we did that just as well. And here you can see that after a bit of work on it, I think it looks way better than before and way more believable. It's not photorealistic, I know that, but it's cool. However, as I told you before, still not there. Because seeing such scene without sound, it doesn't feel right. Therefore, I did a sound design just as well. Just compare before and after. This is without it. This is with it. At least in my eyes, it's night and day. But it did not happen with two downloaded explosion sounds. It doesn't work like that. You need to work on layers, adding even sounds that are maybe almost subconscious, but it just adds up, and in the end, I think I did fairly good job with it. Now I think that I can sell the idea of this clip way better, because you just feel it. You hear that something bad is happening there. I need to mention that in many movies, like sound design and what you hear is often way more important than what you hear, because it puts you in the right mood. If it doesn't align audio with what you see, it will never feel right in the end. In here you can see that I used a lot of layers to cover every aspect that was necessary there, and it was only after this stage that I was really happy with the result here. AI gave me material. Human layers and editing gave me control. If you try to do this with one prompt, it breaks. If you try to do this in 3D alone, it eats weeks. But when you put AI inside a real pipeline, you can actually ship. Comment one real location you would want me to retexture next, and I will pick one and build it. And if you want more workflows like this, you know where to click.